Welcome to the Tazara News Network, an African news network by Africans. Zambia, like most African countries, got independence from the colonizers in the 1960s. It was supposed to be a new dawn for the African people, the end of a great holocaust for the indigenous people of Africa. But in over half a century, Africa has stumbled from one disaster to the next. The people of Africa are the poorest people in the world, while the great wealth of Africa is devoured by foreigners. The reason this has happened is because somewhere between slavery and colonialism, Africans lost all of our ancient knowledge. Our ancestors were great industrialists who smelted steel long before any other people on this planet. And we had tradesmen, tradeswomen, and merchants whose trade networks could rival the Silk Roads of Asia. When Africans re-emerged onto the world stage as free nations in the 1960s, we were like blind men and women, and our leaders were like the one-eyed king leading the blind. Africans were once masters of agriculture, yet Africans have neglected to develop the agriculture sector. Agriculture, in the form of a green revolution, powered by mass irrigation, is the cornerstone of a strong economy. The products needed to spark an industrial revolution and end poverty once and for all in Africa are produced by smallholder farmers. A green revolution can lift the living standards of the Zambian to first world level within 10 years. In this episode, we'll talk about how a green revolution can be initiated in Zambia and raise the living standards of the Zambian to American level standards within a very reasonable space of time.
One of the big, in my view, myths around Asia's economic development story is that it all started after the market reforms, country by country. So it was in China after 1978, or Korea after the Korean War in the 1950s and 60s. What we see, if we really look at the data, is that much of the very first stage of economic development came through these basic breakthroughs in smallholder staple food production, what we now call green revolutions. So in China, a lot of this actually took place in the 1950s and even 1960s, actually significant boosts in the production per person and per hectare. And then in 1978, 79 and onwards, the market reforms were like taking the lid off to let the price effects and the incentives take shape around what was already a significantly productive rural economy, at least measured in output. And then it just jumped, and that was the second part of the story. Similarly, in Korea, there's the classic economics textbook first sentence, which is Korea and Ghana were at the same level of income in 1960. Why did Korea do so well and Ghana didn't do as well? It's actually not quite right. If you look at Korea, they were already producing, for example, more than 3 tons per hectare of rice and cereals, even in 1960, with a very intensive fertilizer use and modern seeds, much of which had actually been developed in 1930s, whereas Ghana, for example, wasn't even at 1 ton per hectare, so not even a third of the productivity in terms of output per land unit. We see that if we can get these complementary investment packages, which in the poorest countries and for growing food is really actually quite simple. It's water, it's nutrients, and seeds. And those are the things that ultimately go into growing food. And then of course you need the infrastructure, you need the roads, you need the access to the training and farmer support. But we need to make sure that in all parts of the world those investments can be made available. There are some particular reasons why Africa didn't have those investments available, or even the technologies available, really until the 1980s. And then there was some unfortunate policies which prevented a larger scale set of investments.
The average individual income of an American citizen is $30,000 per year. The people of Zambia can easily have an income of $30,000 a year if we concentrate on a green revolution and on only 4 products: tilapia, soybeans, maize, and cassava. If we initiated a mass aquaculture program to breed tilapia in Zambia, we could easily feed the whole of Southern Africa and maybe the whole of Africa. This business, the tilapia business, is worth many millions of dollars and is easily capable of lifting the Zambians out of poverty. The Chinese are making millions selling tilapia to the African people. They're exporting tilapia to almost every country in Africa. This is a business which the Zambian people should be doing. This is a business which the African people should be doing. This is the kind of business that will lift us out of poverty. Apart from just feeding the people, tilapia can be used to feed freshwater fish like salmon. Salmon cannot survive on plant-based foods alone. They need meat, and tilapia is one of the main sources of meat for salmon and other fish that depend on meat. That business alone would lift the Zambian people out of out of poverty. The soybeans is the main source of animal feed in this world today. In China, in the United States, it's a major business. The African governments have not invested in producing mass soybean for the African people. We've all seen the videos of the Chinese farmers selling chickens to the Zambian people. And when the Zambians were asked why they don't breed their own chickens, the Zambians had the same answer all the time. They cannot afford the feed for the animals. Soybeans is the main input for animal feed all over the world, and it has been for a long time. These are products which can easily be grown and processed in Zambia. Fish, soybeans, maize, and cassava can produce an agri-processing revolution that could easily lift our people, the Zambian people, to an average yearly income of $30,000 a year, the same as the US. And this can be done within 10 years if we concentrate on those 4 products.